Just ahead on American Black Journal, we've assembled a special panel of guests for a frank discussion about what lies ahead for African Americans under a Donald Trump administration. We'll also talk about reaction to the possible closing of 24 Detroit public schools. We got a great show ahead. Don't go anywhere. American Black Journal starts right now.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Now that Donald Trump has actually become the nation's 45th president, many African Americans, women, and other minorities are fearful about the future, especially in light of the highly divisive 2016 campaign. Also of concern is the president's promise to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Joining me now to talk about this and more are Kim Trent, an active civic and community leader here in Detroit, Keith Owens, who's the senior editor of the Michigan Chronicle, and Greg Bowens, a public relations and political consultant. Thanks to all three of you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I want to start with the president's words out of his own mouth. Let's take a clip at one of the things he said this week.
January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before.
Well, the likes of which the world has never seen before. He's right about that.
Except for showing up the next day. The women's march.
Right. The unprecedented nature.
The first thing to keep in mind is that we didn't really see that.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter if we don't believe your lying eyes. I mean,
right.
You know, I mean, so at we're in an age now where it doesn't matter what's on tape, doesn't matter what you've seen.
Right.
You know, he did not see it. The media planned it. It was a coup.
You have to stop believing what comes out of his mouth and believe what's in his heart.
Yes. Right. Let's look at what his
we need to find that first.
Let's talk though about this first week that he has been the president. He's been busy signing executive orders about a lot of different things, but he's also promised a lot of things. And you know, as an African American, as a member of the African American community, we have been really worried about a number of things that he's talked about. We haven't seen them quite yet. But they're coming.
Well, I think we have seen some things. He's already, his administration has already said that they're going to be cutting funding to the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. They've taken down the website for the Civil Rights Division and replaced it with a website in praise of law enforcement, as if those two things are somehow at loggerheads. I mean, you can support law enforcement and also the civil rights of Americans.
Imagine that.
But for some reason, you know, there seems to be this, pitting of those two entities.
And there's almost a messaging at work there as much as there is a policy framework, right? It's saying this is not important, this is not a priority. You look at who he's asked to be the Attorney General of the United States. This is somebody who has said he doesn't prioritize these things anymore.
Right. And, for us here in Michigan, if you look at East Point and the situation that has developed there with being sued by the Justice Department because, Black and brown people don't have a fair opportunity to get elected to their city council or any of their higher offices, you wonder whether or not the Justice Department will just sort of not pursue that under a Jeff Sessions. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it can have real implications for us right here very quickly in Michigan.
Well, we're talking about a man who, in his own dealings as a businessman, was accused by the Justice Department of not renting to
Right.
African American tenants.
Found guilty
he
of
hasn't-
that,
Found guilty.
and then went back and did it again,
once again. Right. So this is not someone who I am looking forward to a strong enforcement of our nation's civil rights laws.
What about what he's saying there, though, about this voice that spoke on November 8th to put him in an office? And we can argue about whether the popular vote or the electoral vote matters.
I don't think we. Oh yeah, there's no argument there.
Right. I mean, he didn't win the popular vote, but he did get 63 million votes. That's a lot of people who are frustrated about, I think, some legitimate things, but also maybe frustrated about some things that we ought to be concerned about.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at it, I mean, is that once again, we're talking about within the white working class. I think it's important to say white because too often you hear when they say the working class or women, we're talking about the white working class. But so we're looking at two things. One, are we looking at their frustration, or are we looking at the fact that what they're overlooking? In other words, I think it's important to notice that when their frustrations, that they overlook all the other things that Trump has done and said. We don't have to go back to historically. You don't expect them to know everything that he did way back when, but just during the campaign.
Right.
And it's interesting to note that their vote for Trump was that regardless of all that was okay with them.
Yeah.
I think you're giving them too much credit because I mean you're saying they overlooked it and it was.
Oh no, that's not what
I think his populist message and
Exactly.
his naked kind of appeals to nativism. I think that was on purpose, and I think they responded to that.
Well, that's the reason why the Klan backed him.
Yeah,
I think that's what I guess. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But do you really think that most of that 63 million people who voted for him have that kind of animus for African Americans?
I don't think that it's as overt as that. I don't know that they, spend their days and nights thinking about how I can impress African Americans.
Cutting eye holes out of it.
But I do think that there's this overwhelming feeling that black people and brown people have some kind of leg up on white people. I mean, that's been the narrative for the last 20 to 30 years. And I do think that there's like widespread belief that that's the reality, especially. I mean, the election of the first black president really, I think, for a lot of them, reinforced that mistaken.
Right. I think that's what I'm trying to say in the sense that they are when I say that, they're not overlooking, but in the sense that what the things that Trump said and did don't matter as much to them. In other words, when he says racial things, racist things, the things are like, well, so what?
Well,
black folks get upset too fast.
It's like that. It's like that old guy that lives in the corner house, that comes out on the porch and says all this crazy stuff to the kids running by, and you just sort of ignore him, right?
But now he's the president.
Yeah, now he's the president. We elected that guy, and it's interesting because I keep asking myself whether or not we have come to the end of the golden age for African Americans, which would
That's an interesting way to phrase it.
Yeah, the golden age of African Americans lasted 8 years. Is that what it is?
That's how we get out of 400.
Out of 400, here's your 8.
But we've always been on
But golden age. So, okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what we saw in the last 8 years with Barack Obama?
I think that if you're living up I-75 and you see the trailers and you see the poverty as you go up to Mackinac and those ways, those places, and those folks are turning on TV and they are seeing a black president, they're seeing, black stars, folks that look like they are doing really well, and their immediate interaction with black folks is not all that much,
Right.
While we have plenty of white friends, it's not enough of us to go around, to be honest with you, when you go around to other places in the state. And so their experience, their black experience is shaped by and large on what they see on TV. And if they're not seeing black folks committing crimes
So this is
in
a
Cadillac.
But it's also, I think it's a dying gasp. I mean, I think that they're pushing back against the future. I mean, the browning of America is real. I mean, it's not just the browning of America, gays, transgender, all of that. That's what's coming. And I think it's the same thing like with technology when they're talking about, bring back my coal jobs. That's gone.
Well, unless you can deport everybody.
Well, right.
I mean,
that's also
the immigration stuff he's doing, which he announced early this week and is going to do, I guess, for the next couple of days, doesn't affect African Americans, but it does speak to this othering, I suppose, of non-white Americans.
Well, you know what? And there's a mean-spiritedness that I've seen in it. Like, I just read yesterday that there is no more Spanish translation on the White House .gov. I mean, why? Why would you do that? I mean, that is, as you said, a political statement that if you don't, and we are a nation of immigrants, and all of us at some point, or our ancestors, came to this country without being able to speak, unless you are, unless your ancestors came from England.
Yeah,
Right.
You know, but this idea that it makes you somehow a less important American if you don't, you know, if you're not fluent in English.
Right, and that's the flip side, I think, of when he said in his speech, "America first." That's what he means, white America first, and English-speaking white America first. You know, so that's why that's who they're appealing to.
English-speaking white American Christian male.
Right.
I mean, and let's be honest about it. You know, talking about building a wall and starting to, he signed the executive order to build the wall, and now we're seeing images on TV of a wall being built. Although, you know, I don't know where the hell that came from. I assume that there's, you know, portions of a wall and fencing along the border. But all the talk about immigration is really centered around brown people.
Yes.
You know, and black folks and black immigrants are not going to be able to escape that. Remember when we used to flip out about the Haitian boat crisis and folks coming over? And in places like Miami, the African American, the black experience is not really there. I mean, there's a Pan-African sort of experience, but not African American experience. We're not part of the political power structure there. We, you know, it's like we've disappeared.
Oh yeah.
And but there are black people there, and so those folks are still under the same kind of, I think, pressures that that other immigrants are. And so if you're from Nigeria, or if you're from Haiti, or if you're, you know, pick your spot, you know, you are definitely in danger of going. And it seems like it's up to us. How are we as African Americans going to respond to the call for help?
Well, see, that's what I'm, I guess, trying to get to here with this immigration question is, you know, we've had a hard time in the past making coalitions among minority groups in this country. Blacks and Hispanics don't work together to elect representatives to push back against this stuff. Now that, you know, the situation is really serious and we're talking about sending people away or not welcoming people in, does that inspire a different kind of political dynamic between African Americans and these other groups?
I would hope for our survival, because when they get done with them, they're going to look to us. I mean, in terms of being able to roll back stuff, I don't want to be too gloom and
But
doom
I'm hopeful, having attended the Women's March in Detroit this weekend, and seeing women of all different ages and socioeconomic backgrounds and races coming together to speak with one voice to say, we reject this leadership.
We're not going to do this.
Right, but you know, obviously we have to go beyond the symbolism of a march to real coalition building. And you're right, that has been a challenge for us in the past. But the one good thing that might come out of a Trump presidency is that I think people will recognize the importance of us.
One of the speakers there was funny. I can't remember the man's name, but he said, "So I don't know what kind of president he's going to be, but he's one hell of an organizer."
You know, that's right. Better maybe than Barack Obama.
I mean, one of the things that we always know is wherever you come in at, black is always seen as the lowest part of the totem
lower
pole.
than you are.
So the Arab folks and the Hispanic folks can take their lumps and go, well, at least I'm not black. Well, now it seems like there's a different kind of dynamic.
Although I'm wondering now if women are at the bottom of the totem pole, because to be honest, with this last election brought into real sharp focus for me how widespread misogyny is, and the thing that's insidious about misogyny is you could be a woman and be a misogynist too. And so I have heard conversations in the beauty shop and other places about why I have concerns about a woman being in charge that you just wouldn't think you would hear in 2016, and I heard them, and so now I'm wondering if women are actually lower on the poll than we thought we were.
And taking that into consideration, do you think that now that Hispanic is no longer the new white and Arabic is no longer the new white, do we really have that opportunity to build a coalition? And I think some of those folks are going to have to get over their own sort of hubris that they've had in feeling like
I can tell you, I've worked on a few projects with Access where we've done that, where they really have reached out to the African American community to try to build those bridges. So.
All right, we're going to get to a break. Up next, we're going to tackle a reaction to the possible closing of 24 Detroit public schools. But first, here is a 1978 Detroit Black Journal interview with Eartha Kitt about the widely publicized incident in 1968 when she spoke out against the Vietnam War at a White House luncheon hosted by Lady Bird Johnson, the president's wife.
I asked Mrs. Johnson, don't you think that it would be better to get rid of the rats in Harlem, for instance, and then put the flower pots? You cannot cover upsetting by putting a Band-Aid on it.
The rats can knock them down.
You have to find the core. You have to find the core of the matter. And don't you think also that perhaps it might have something to do with our involvement in Vietnam? Because our boys feel that if we are good guys, we are the ones that are most apt to get the gun, to go shoot and kill and steal. And as a result, me as a mother who has brought my child up by the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, and do all of the good things that Christianity should be all about, and supposedly is all about. That's what they have been teaching us ever since existence, that
Absolutely.
we can remember. That now you are taking the child and throwing it into a position where all of these 10 Commandments are now meaningless. And after it is going through that ism, you bring it back home and you don't detrain it. You throw it back into the society. And it still has that killer instinct that you've taught it, whereby us mothers have been trying to say, don't kill, don't steal, don't do anything, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And now it's confusing not only to the child, but it's also confusing to me as a parent.
Right. All right, of course, in that clip, we also saw Ron Scott, the Detroit activist and former host of this show, who we lost, I think in 2016, just last year. So great memory there. All right, I'm here with my special panel of guests, Kim Trent, Keith Owens, and Greg Bowens. Let's turn now to the topic of the closing, the proposed closing of 24 Detroit public schools. This is an argument we've been having a long time in this city and this state about what to do about low-performing schools. Kim, I want to start with you because I know you're a parent in the city of Detroit who has to navigate this crazy educational landscape. Does this make any sense as a way to make things better for people like you?
I honestly don't think so. Now, my son, we're blessed in that we live in the neighborhood where my son
With the
attends
best,
a DPS school with one of the best
right.
DPS elementary. We were happy to see it on the list as one of the few, unfortunately, in one of the few DPS elementary schools that is over 50%.
High performing.
Right, high performing. But that's not the reality for most parents. And I don't think closing schools, particularly when we have a new direction, we have a new empowered school board, we have financial stability for the first time in many, many years. Why would now be the time that you pull the rug out from under these parents and students, and particularly in neighborhoods where they don't have other options?
Yeah.
And no one is having a conversation about smart growth among these charters, because all these charters are coming in that are horrible. Some of them are good, most of them are not. And there's no quality control for them. But, you know, for us.
But now we're going to close the public schools.
But we're going to close, I mean, it's just, it doesn't.
I mean, one of the things we don't ever talk about when we talk about school closings is the fact that public schools are institutions in neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods rely on those institutions. And a lot of times when you close the school, you doom the neighborhood to, and a lot of these schools are in places where we've started investing money. Osborne's a great example, where there's a lot of turnaround effort. You close the school, what happened?
Here's an interview, I think it was in the Free Press, when they interviewed one of the parents who had moved to a particular neighborhood specifically. You know, and then when they closed the school, it's like, now, and because, you know, how am I going to get my kid to the school? Because, you know, like I said, also the issue of transportation, you know, it's not like it's just automatically there. I mean, how do you get them to the schools? But I think this is something we're also going to be seeing more and more, because this plays right into Betsy DeVos's, you know, hand. I mean, anything that closes, that's she loves it, because
like
it will open up. Oh yeah, it'll
boon to the charters.
Yeah, boon to the charters. I mean, because she thinks charters solve everything. So this is a serious problem.
Well, you know, there's been a lot of discussion, I think, within the last year about neoliberalism and its impact on the black community and politics.
Sure.
And this situation seems to me to be a perfect example of how neoliberalism has failed us, in that we keep looking for market approaches to solve some of our most pressing problems. Because those schools are failing in part because of the unfair competition from charter schools, I want to be able to say.
Yeah, but the number one architect of that is Betsy DeVos, who I don't think she would embrace a liberal title at all. She's the person who's put all the money into.
No. Neoliberalism, speaking from the perspective as an approach of using market forces to solve our problems.
Right, certainly.
And you feel like we've done that in the city of Detroit.
Right, I feel like we've done that in the city of Detroit. I think we've done that around the state, and it has completely failed us. And so we never spend enough time actually putting the resources and doing the things that we need to do to support the teacher in the classroom in the mission to educate the student.
So, but if we go back before the creation of charter schools in Michigan, which is in the mid to late 90s, the school district was in big trouble then. When you and I were writing about schools in the early 90s, we had all these problems. So, you know, I mean, is some of this driven by our inability or unwillingness, I guess, to confront those problems even before we relied on this market approach, which I agree has it's not delivered any of the things that it promised us.
Well, I would submit to you this, Stephen, and that is simply is that as a society, we have been sort of schizophrenic in what we have demanded from our public school system and from our educational system. And so it used to be just educate them enough to be able to work the farms and count and weigh grain and livestock. And then we moved into the industrial age, and it was educate them enough to be able to operate a machine and that kind of thing. And then we got sort of lost when we started going into the information age. Do we train them for computers? Do we train them for, and we just didn't know what to ask for. And I think our expectations that we put on the school systems, failed us. And we ended up with a bunch of nothing.
I think there's also the question of engagement, not to put everything on parents, but I think that I still remember the image of when Governor Engler at the time, with the takeover, which, I was opposed to. I think it was a good idea, but I still remember when dragging people out of the meeting and thinking, okay, where were you before?
5 years ago.
Before, I mean, all of a sudden everybody's at the meeting. So, but when you come to elections, there's something, there are very few people that vote are paying attention until that happens. It's like, has to be a higher level of attention paid and engagement.
I mean, there's no question. We have to admit that as Detroiters, and I say that in some pretty broad terms, we've not taken care of our own schools. We have not taken care of the franchise of public education for a really long time in this city. And I'm hopeful that this new board, because I think we got some good people elected to it. I think we have a superintendent in place now who's pretty decent, even if they don't keep her, if they get someone better, we have an opportunity. But some of what we're looking at is sort of in a mirror, isn't it?
Well, is it a mirror in East Point? Is it a mirror in Easter? Is it a mirror
that's a great
in
point,
Royal Oak? Is it a mirror? I mean, there are plenty of places, right? It's all over where folks are struggling and trying to thread the needle. And Bridge Magazine had written about how, charter schools have become the new way to segregate, school systems. And I just think that we need to have. I don't think it's fair to say that that we failed our children in Detroit in particular when we have all been victims of, I think, this market approach to public education.
And when you talk about market approach, a lot of times the buzzwords that folks on the other side say is choice.
Right.
And really what you're giving choice to people who have options. If you live in a neighborhood that has all lousy schools and you just shut down one of the schools that's lousy, and the only other option is you're not really giving them choice because we don't have as Keith alluded to, we don't have a transportation system here that's reliable that we will put our children on to get to a school, and we don't have the kind of resources to invest in that kind of thing. So,
now they're switching to the electronic stuff. Take classes online. It's like you can't even get them to pay attention in class. You really think you're going to be able to get these kids?
And which, of course, destroys the whole idea of the school as a community. Right?
Exactly.
If I'm sitting at home and you're sitting at home.
That makes it
we
worse.
really don't go to the same. We're not having the same experience.
Right.
And it gets back to the beginning, like I say. I mean, closing the school, closing schools don't make better schools.
Right.
How that's not it. I think it's the wrong approach.
The one voice that we haven't heard in this debate so far is the mayor of the city of Detroit. I've sort of been waiting for him to come out and say, well, wait a second. These are neighborhoods that he's, directing resources toward, trying to get people to invest in. Some of them are right around these schools that they want to close, and he hasn't said,
What's interesting,
I think this is a good idea.
Which is what I know about Mike Duggan. He's probably working behind the scenes.
Right.
On
Well,
it.
I'm sure
that's what I would imagine. That's what I hope. Because certainly, there's going to have to be some serious contemplation about how we go forward with this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, with the neighborhoods. Well, particularly because what they're trying to do, what I understand from Maurice Cox, too. I mean, there's been much focus about every downtown, but what he said just recently, that now the big push in terms of redoing neighborhoods and stabilizing neighborhoods going on, and that's supposed to be getting rolled out this year.
You've got to
have the school. Yeah, that's part of that.
Some sort of institution there.
Well, even in my work with my day job, we have done we helped a number of charter schools and a public school get started, and almost all of them were in Midtown and downtown. I mean,
is that right?
Which is not where the people are. I mean, the people, even though there is a lot of retail development going on there and restaurants and stuff, the people still don't live downtown in Midtown like they do in the neighborhoods. So we really have to be strategic.
Well, maybe Mayor Duggan will be able to move the ball forward, because I think that he has been a master at eliminating the issue of race in conversations.
Sure. By going around it, just not making it part of.
Right.
What
So I mean, you know,
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
hope that works.
Obama was the magic Negro. That was it. Like, pull things off.
Can't believe you just said that about our former president. Okay.
That's my man, but I'm just saying. In 1950, there would have been no question about whether or not Obama was black. He'd have been going to the back of the bus.
Right.
All right. Kim Trent, Keith Owens, Greg Bowens, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
American Black Journal. All right, that's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.